What you're looking at, folks, here is a map of states that I have outlined in 3 different colors. The ones that are outlined in gray are states that have these tentative, unconstitutional, faithless elector laws. And the other ones that are still in either their requisite red or blue are the ones that do not have laws. I put this up just to illustrate the fact that these laws are going to be found unconstitutional, and I'm going to explain and walk everybody through, all the way back from the Founding Fathers, why the Electoral College was never meant to be a direct instrument for the will of the people. When we go back to the Constitution and when it was written, at the time, only white male landowners were allowed to vote. So right then and there, we can establish that Congress and the Founding Fathers did not have this idea in their mind that the will of the majority of the people was an overriding factor in the decision for president. In the 13 colonies, there could be different candidates on different ballots, different states. Some of them may be assigned to parties, some of them may not be. The people of Ohio might have had well, it wasn't one of the 13 colonies, but we'll use this for illustration purposes. The people of Ohio may have had one idea, one group of 2 or 3 or 4 people they wanted to run for president, while the people of South Carolina may have had an entirely different group of people. So there was never any illusion in the Founding Fathers' mind that there was going to be this national consensus and that the Electoral College was going to be some kind of an instrument to reflect that. It actually is part of the genius of our system when you think about it. We had an opportunity this year to display the American system in all of its glory for the entire world, and we blew it. And I'm also going to illustrate why this is the fault of our media and why they, going all the way back to my very first video, I have contended are the greatest villains in this. We could have run 6 individual, distinct candidates this year for the entire world to see that America is still very diverse. We're not an A or B people. We could have run Donald Trump. He could have put a little I by his name for the alt-right. We could have run an actual Republican, Ted Cruz, John Kasich, somebody like that. We could have run a libertarian, which is just really an offshoot of the Republican Party. Then we could have gone over to the what you call more liberal Democratic side, and we could have run Hillary Clinton as your conventional Democrat, Jill Stein as the Green Party wing, and then we could have run Bernie Sanders as a socialist. And each of those would have represented a good chunk of the American people. I mean, each one of those groups of people is unique and distinct and has their own beliefs and ideals. Yet, we fell into this trap, this communistic, fascistic trap, that we had to either be red, or we had to be blue, or we were irrelevant. And this is fascism on display, and the media has droned this into our heads that either you vote R or you vote D or you're irrelevant and you're not part of the American system and you shouldn't have a say in anything. What Donald Trump did, what a party normally does, what somebody who wants to lead a party normally does, is he goes into that party and he creates consensus within the party. And he gets the party to rally around him and come into his camp and think like him so that they can support him as a leader, so that when they put him up as a nominee, he has the support and the weight and the belief of the entire party. Now, not every nominee is going to represent every wing of the party, of course, but what Donald Trump did was completely different. It was an entirely different thing. He went in and from the jump started to turn the people of the party against its own leaders. And the people of the party were very willing to go right along with this little scheme because they were mad at the leaders of their party, because they had lost 2 straight elections. It was really kind of a very sad thing to see that this man could come in and start pointing fingers and calling people names and calling people liars and attacking their family and attacking their manhood and their looks in the case of Carly Fiorina. And people just bought right along with it. They just went right along with it. And the rest of the party was horrified. You know, it's been the entire basis and the contention that I've made from the first video I made back in November, that the reason we will see something this year that we haven't seen in any other year is because of what he did here. You know, people have tried to liken him to Ronald Reagan, where Ronald Reagan did an end run around the media and went right to the people, and that's a mischaracterization. What Donald Trump did is he didn't do an end run around the media and go right to the people. He did an end run around the leaders of the party and used his Twitter account to go right to the people and start to push their buttons and swing their emotions and prey on their fears about what the future might hold. And he didn't contrast his ideas against anyone else's ideas. He contrasted your fear of the future against the rest of those choices. But anyway, the Electoral College. You know, it was supposed to be a nod to the will of the people of that state, and it was never any, like I had said, never any delusion that some candidate was going to receive 50% or more popular vote of the people to be installed as president. And the reason they thought that was fine was because the power of the president of the United States wasn't supposed to reach all the way down to the common man. That's why they didn't even allow him to make the vote, because the president wasn't supposed to be this powerful. We see the common man in California and the common man in South Carolina looking to the president in Washington, D.C. as the beginning and final arbiter and dictator of the happiness or the well-being and the future of their lives is just insane. One of the principles of the Republican Party, and you can go look this up in the Republican Oath, that the most powerful government is the government closest to the people. That the most powerful person in your life should be your local mayor and sheriff. And then from that up to your county officials or your city officials, they should be the next most powerful. And then up to your state. And then up to the government. The government should, the federal government shouldn't have anywhere near this much power or sway to either make people happy or unhappy. And the Electoral College was never meant to be an instrument of the will of the people. In fact, you can look this up. Prior to 1964, electors weren't bound to parties. When they sent an elector or a group of electors to go vote in the Electoral College, they weren't assigned to a party. They were supposed to just look at the qualification of the man, regardless of the political leaning. You see, this is why Republicans, I see in my comments, you're wanting to point fingers at Democrats and pointing fingers at Hillary Clinton. Your problem isn't going to be in the Democratic Party. They have no say over the electors. The electors themselves have say over themselves. And if they've decided to stand up or revolt against Donald Trump and not to put their name and their vote for the man, you should understand why that's occurring. This idea that just because this man manipulated the system to get the R by his name, and I outlined that in my last video, how he blackmailed the party, doesn't mean he united the party. And when you folks say, well, okay, if the Electoral College doesn't approve him and it goes to Congress, Congress is all run by Republicans anyway, so done and done. You see, the binary programming here is just unbelievable. If Republicans in the Electoral College wouldn't approve of the man, what makes you think that Republicans in the House of Representatives are all going to be united as well? They're not. And I've actually gone 2 pages to show you that. I've showed you the list of Republicans, the 33 sitting Republican members of the House of Representatives that are never Trump. And I've shown you the 15 sitting Republican senators that are never Trump. And there's a reason for that. There's an absolute reason for that. This man wasn't a Republican 2 years ago. He didn't represent the values and the ideals of the party. he went up and he got on stage and he spoke to the values and ideals of some people in the party, but mostly to their fear. But he didn't have consensus. And it was clear. It was absolute. And even the people that voted for him knew that there wasn't consensus. He was not a consensus choice of Republicans. The entire delegation of the Ohio GOP would not even do election night festivities in the same hotel with the Trump campaign. The entire delegation of the entire state wouldn't do that. What does that tell you? Everybody here wants to run Chris Suffren up a flagpole. The 9/11 responder. This man voting his conscience. This man trying to do the right thing. But because he doesn't now represent the tyranny of the mob, which is what this is, folks. It's the tyranny of the mob. This is something that Republicans would have never alleged 20 years ago. That mob rule should win the day here. If the people of a state here voted, and in a contrast with him versus Hillary Clinton, allowed him to get more votes, that's fantastic, wonderful. But we're not a direct democracy. We don't take the direct vote of the people and then directly apply it into the Electoral College. We give the nod to that party, and we allow their electors to attend the meeting. But the will of those electors, who represent the lifelong membership of the Republican Party, that's what's going to make the decision. And it's very clear. And the Ray v. Blair decision is a great teaching tool, because the Socialistic Democratic Party down in the 1950s that was run by the Klan, that wanted mob rule because they, were, the white racists controlled everything down there, wanted to make sure that the people they put in power had allegiance to the Klan. And they wanted to replace the judgment of the elector with the will of the people. And that's what this boils down to. This is somebody attempting to subvert the will of an elector. That elector isn't operating from the will of the people. He never has. He has never been a simple instrument of the vote. He was an instrument in and of itself, and an elector himself, Brett Schifalo, in another video that I made, clearly, in a very concise, beautifully made 2-minute video, shows that we have to put the candidate as a man to exhaustive scrutiny. And if he, as a man, regardless of his political leanings, Donald Trump would have been the same Donald Trump whether he ran as a Democrat or whether he ran as a Republican. And he could have run as both because he's been a member of both parties 2 different times in his life. So no one is stealing anything from you, Trump voter. No one is robbing you of anything. Because the idea that you think that you really represent all 60 million of the votes that he got in this election is just silly. And even if that were the case, that's not how we do elections in this country. It isn't, it never has been, and it never, Lord willing, will be. Maybe we will. Maybe this will be it'll ironically be the Republican Party that finally abolishes our own Constitution when they're the ones that have been waving it around for the last 20 years and decides to make us the People's Democratic Republic of North America, where it's just a simple popular vote. And you see, we have both sides now claiming that they won the popular vote because, well, one side, is making this false allegation that millions and millions of illegals voted. And by false allegation, I mean that you have no proof, just allegation. On the other side, who knows what they did? Who knows? And you can go all the way back to my November 1st video where I detail this. And I clearly say that with allegations of impropriety on both sides, they are going to use this election as an opportunity to give the Electoral College the ability to invalidate any consideration. And when we look at the picture of the map in front of you right now, the reason those laws are unconstitutional is right before you. Because supposedly they protect some states and they don't protect others. So this has been a little bit longer video than I normally do, but there's a lot to cover. So if anybody wants to, make contrast to my assertions about the Constitution or the Founding Fathers or the role of the Electoral College, please, by all means, I would like to hear it. So Thank you. Take care.